We're back to it this morning on To The Point. Gleaves Whitney from the Hauenstein Center for Presidential Studies is here with us. Gleaves, let's talk a little bit about some of these lecture series. You've been kind enough to invite me over for any number of them. Unfortunately, I missed the Hitchens one, which I know is certainly one of your favorites. But who can come to these, and who might they have seen if they would have shown up in the past?
We've had some great speakers. I've mentioned earlier Richard Norton Smith, who's no stranger to this community.
No, I've been a guest on this show many times, and really one of the most intriguing and interesting people to talk about presidential politics of all time. This guy, he knows facts that most people have long since forgotten. It's just amazing.
He is a walking encyclopedia in the best sense of the term, and he always has the telling anecdote that makes history come alive. You know, Richard has the motto, there's no excuse for a boring history lesson, lecture, or book. And sure enough, his lessons in history to the community have been very well received. Every time we have him come back, we always like to have him go over to the Ford Presidential Museum, where, of course, he led that fine institution for a number of years back in the 1990s.
Well, I think you can make the case, and reporters shouldn't express opinions, but I think it's been pretty well established that he took that museum to the next step. He turned it from what it was, which was not bad at all, to really that living representation. I mean, he was the one who helped get the Watergate tools in there. He was the one who set up the 70s display, which is kind of emblematic of all that was President Ford's time in office, and it really kind of sets the stage for what other presidential museums and libraries have done since.
There is no question. Nobody has run more presidential libraries and museums than Richard Norton Smith. He is the alchemist, because he can go into a library, museum, and he really makes those great details of a presidency and those insightful facts that you might just think, oh, facts, we don't really want to be bogged down, but he makes the facts come alive, and you see, my word, not only is this a key like the Rosetta Stone for this administration, this tells you something about American history I didn't see before. He's the alchemist. He takes this material, he turns it to gold so that people really understand and connect to that history. And so, and you have him come into the Gerald R. Ford Museum Auditorium or to Loosemore Auditorium on our campus. He's able to draw a great crowd and do so with such verve and humor. He really has people, a loyal following here in West Michigan. So we like to bring him in. I've been bringing Colonial Williamsburg into West Michigan. We've had Bill Barker a number of times, who is the Thomas Jefferson at Colonial Williamsburg. And I tell you what's interesting. Bill will always, at some point in his program, say, how many of you have been to Colonial Williamsburg? And just about everyone has. So that's a great connection we have, because then they go out and spread the word.
Right.
We just had Sam Goodyear and Abigail Adams come in, and John Adams. They did a play this winter that was very well received and attended. So we try to bring in people who give our audiences the chance to see history in a different and more insightful light, maybe in a way they hadn't seen it before.
You just brought to my attention something. This is going to be the first scholarly conference on something that I hope you have a big room for this, because November 13th and 14th, after the election, you're going to have a conference, and it's called simply Bush's Legacy, and that's Bush 43, not 41.
That's correct. We're going to have, Rick, the first scholarly assessment of the Bush presidency. It's going to be in the week after the election week. All of the presenters have already written their papers, and so now they're going to look at the election and in events between now and November so that they can revise their papers. We want them to come in and say, here is the significance of the Bush presidency, here are missed opportunities, here are the strong points, here are the weak points. I'm not looking for either hagiography or list the blame game. I really want a scholarly assessment. University of Kansas Press is already on board to publish this volume in February. These scholars will come back. They'll be here in November, then they'll go back to their offices, and they will revise their papers, and then they will be ready for publication. We will have a book out there. It's important that American citizens try to assess this presidency, this last 8 years, because of all the key issues, whether it's Iraq, the general war on terror, energy policy. I mean, if I may venture a personal opinion here, I think that President Bush 43 missed an awesome opportunity, just as Nixon was the anti-communist who could go to China, just as Lyndon Johnson was the Southerner who could inaugurate civil rights to the next degree here. President Bush, as an oil man, could have gone to the oil companies and started to change our energy policy in this country, and he missed that opportunity. That's a way of assessing, for example, without bashing his character or anything like that, but it's just taking it in historical perspective. We want to have the scholars come and look at this. What can we learn now about going into the next 8 years, because we have so many pressing issues?